For the brain injury case study for the treatment plan, I chose TK. So, some performance skills I would want to assess for him would include motor skills such as stabilizes, reaches, grips, manipulates, walks, and endures, and some social interaction skills that I'd want to um, assess are regulates, matches language, and empathizes. Regarding long term and short term goals for TK in three different areas of occupation, the first one I chose was ADLs, and the long term goal was client will perform full body dressing standing with mod I by discharge. And the short term goal for that was client will play three songs on guitar while seated independently, only taking breaks between songs to improve fine motor skills within 6 treatment sessions. For another area of occupation, I chose IADLs, and the long term goal was client will ambulate 40 feet independently with no rest breaks by discharge. And the short term goal was client will perform 3 personal hygiene tasks in front of sink with walker with 3 or less 30-second rest breaks to improve standing tolerance within 6 treatment sessions. For the last area of occupation, I chose social participation, and the long-term goal for this was client will complete a 20-minute job interview displaying appropriate behaviors with no verbal cues by discharge. And the short-term goal was client will independently identify and demonstrate knowledge of appropriate versus inappropriate behaviors within 4 treatment sessions. Moving on to the treatment sessions for TK regarding his goals. The first treatment session looks at addressing long-term goal 1 and short-term goals 1 and 2. So the first 30 minutes of the session would be him actually participating in dressing. So TK will use a reacher to pick out clothing from the dresser, drawer, or from closet. He'll use a dressing stick to aid in dressing if needed, and he'll use a sock aid to don socks. And then as he regains strength, adaptive equipment will be removed as needed so that he can be as independent as possible. The next 15 minutes of the treatment we'll have TK work on his fine motor skills. So we'll first have him participate in pinch activities such as threading a piece of string with beads, and then we'll go into him playing simple songs on the guitar, such as songs that only require 5 chords or less, and then we'll slowly increase the difficulty. And the last 15 minutes of the session will be addressing his ability to ambulate and his standing tolerance. So he will ambulate from bed to bathroom sink with a walker and contact guard assist, and as he improves, he'll use the walker less. And then he'll perform morning ADLs such as brushing teeth, washing face, and grooming, and he'll be allowed rest breaks as needed. And as these treatments progress, he'll need less rest breaks. Moving on to the second treatment session, this one addresses long-term goals 2 and 3 and short-term goal 3. So the first 30 minutes of the treatment session would address his ambulation. So TK will begin to ambulate with walker, and then will eventually switch him to a cane once he feels confident and comfortable. And he'll ambulate around the bedroom to gather clothes for dressing. And after he's dressed, he will then again ambulate walking around the room when he's making his bed and cleaning a nightstand and dresser, like the top part of it if he's got bottles sitting everywhere. The next 15 minutes will be educating and demonstrating appropriate interview behaviors, and then TK will participate in an interview simulation with an OT, and he'll receive feedback on the things that he did well and the things that he can improve on. And the last 15 minutes of the session will include him identifying behaviors that are not appropriate when someone is sad or grieving, and then he will go through similar simulations to show how to respond to certain situations, such as when someone is sad, angry, or happy, and he'll also receive feedback on that. Ways to grade up the treatment sessions would include removing adaptive equipment, incorporating a time frame to complete tasks such as completing full body dressing in 8 minutes or less, and using a ukulele instead of a guitar as it would require more refined fine motor skills. And then ways to grade down would be incorporating more adaptive equipment at first, as we still don't want him to be reliant on everything adaptive equipment, allowing more rest breaks, increasing the assist level at first, and then loose fitting clothing for dressing, as it's easier to put on those than tighter fitting clothing. The theory that guided each treatment was the first treatment was guided by the biomechanical frame of reference as it focuses on TK's impairments, and the second treatment is guided by the cognitive model as it's focused on the way TK thinks and regulates his emotions. The CPT codes for treatment session 1 would be 97535, which is ADLs because he is actively participating in various ADL tasks. And then for treatment session 2, it would be 97530, or therapeutic activities, because he's participating in simulations to practice appropriate behaviors, but these simulations are not going to mirror exact situations. They'll provide him with experience, but it's not going to be exact to real life situations. So, some considerations for modification and adaptations regarding fatigue. You could incorporate rest breaks and energy conservation techniques, and also do not overstimulate. For weakness, incorporating weight bearing activities or providing adaptive equipment. For cognition and memory, use of a visual schedule, mnemonics, and using association. For pain, whether it's physical or emotional, breathing or relaxation techniques, TINS, and massage. For tremors and ataxia, while not specifically mentioned in TK's situation, it can be managed or helped with weighted utensils or wrist weights. For dysphagia, again, while not specifically mentioned, thickened liquids can help with this. Fine motor deficits, you could incorporate built-up handles or other devices that make gripping or pinching easier. For fall risk or poor balance, removing rugs or items on the floor that would increase the risk of tripping, incorporating support handles in the home, and having client ambulate using a walker or a cane for support until they feel comfortable to go without. Sleep disturbances, so TK didn't report any sleep disturbances, but calming music can help in this case. For difficult behaviors, making sure to incorporate rest breaks to allow the clients to recollect themselves. And for vision and visual perceptual changes, again, while not mentioned, they can be managed with reducing stimulation and allowing rest breaks. Some ethical and cultural considerations to keep in mind is that TK is from New Zealand, so cultural components could be considered as they may differ compared to the US. Some ethical considerations include making sure to abide by HIPAA compliance and the OT Code of Ethics. And then a worst case scenario that you'd want to be prepared for is that TK may become overly confident in his transfers and mobility, and he might try and perform them completely independent with no supervision, and he could fall and cause more injuries. For example, he could fall and hit his head and acquire a second brain injury along with possible bone breakage. So documentation of the incident is necessary while attempting to get proper emergency help. And after help is received and client is returning to treatment, you would want to make sure to implement safety precautions and make sure they're taught consistently so that he knows that he shouldn't be doing those independently until an OT or somebody else tells him that it's okay. And then restrictions will be set in place to prevent it from happening